Father and Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, Amen. The Gospel today talks to us about an idea of our need for a community, our need for a Christian community. I want to tell you something, طبعا guys, you know today is Thomas Sunday. And a lot of time people blame Thomas for doubting. But if you think about it, I was reading it a little bit more this few weeks. I also felt that the disciples also doubted. And if you look in the Gospel of Luke, right after the resurrection of our Lord Jesus Christ, he appeared to Mary Magdalene and told her, "Tell my brothers." He appeared to the disciples of Emmaus and told her, "Tell my brother," and they discovered Jesus Christ. And then what happened? After this, Jesus appeared to the disciples. When he appeared to them, they were frightened. And they thought they saw a ghost. And a lot of time, the gospel relates fear to lack of faith. Fear is related to lack of faith. Because whenever I'm scared, whenever I'm worried, it usually shows that I am less dependent on God. For Thomas doubted, but the disciples also doubted to a certain extent. Maybe you might tell me, well, Thomas was a little very specific in his request. You know, I want to see the marks of the hands. I want to see the... Well, you have to ask yourself, how did he even know that Jesus was pierced in his side? Specifically asked for certain things that he must have known, like only two possibilities. One, either reading the Old Testament prophecies, which least likely, or the second one is actually being connected with the church and knowing. So what was his mistake? The problem with Thomas is that he left the disciples. Right after the resurrection, Sunday, right of the resurrection, where did he go? We don't know where he went. The whole church sitting together, dealing with the problems they have seen in the crucifixion of our Lord Jesus Christ, and he's nowhere to be found. A lot of time people say, it's a new philosophy, I don't need church. Or I don't feel anything when I come to church. I want to tell you a few things. Most of the sins in our life leads to isolation. If you lie, you cheat. If you steal, if you even get involved in addiction, a lot of these sins isolate you from somebody that's close to you, whether your own family, your spouses, your cousins, your aunts, your friends, whatever it is. Sins tend to isolate. Sin tend to isolate. That's why one of the very well known contemporary author C.S. Lewis, he wrote about a book called The Great Divorce, and he was describing hell. And his description of hell is people, كل واحد in hell has a house, and they just feel like I cannot no longer stand the person next to me, so the solution is to isolate. And a lot of time, the devil finds it more convenient or easier to isolate us before he makes us fall into sin. That's why it's very important for us. We do not isolate ourselves from our community, whether from our church, our families, our close relationships, because this is what God intended for us, to change, to suffer, to see Him, and to make an impact. A lot of time people say, when we come to church, we don't feel anything. And I was talking with the youth about this. I think a big problem right now in our culture is that we base too much on feelings. We base too much on feelings. If I feel something, then it must be right. If I don't feel it, it must be wrong. And feelings are not pure facts. Feelings are guide that God put in our life so we can help examine ourselves and also enjoy certain things in life. And I'll give you an example. You might, a mother, for example, she has a child who just, was failing in school, he did something really wrong. He goes back home, she's very, very upset at him. And a lot of anger inside her heart. That doesn't mean she doesn't love him. A lot of people, for example, be like, well, I wanna separate from my spouse. Why? Because I don't have any feelings for them. Well, is love only feelings? You can apply the same thing to the church. Is faith only feelings? If our faith is only feeling, then our faith is unstable. If our faith is only feelings, then our faith is unstable, because our feelings are unstable. Our faith must be grounded in a rock. That's why Jesus likes to use the expression of a rock. Solid rock, doesn't move. Jesus is the cornerstone. So our faith is grounded in our Lord Jesus Christ. It's important for us, my brothers and sisters, as we go to the holy 50 days, life of victory, life of joy, we usually kind of connect with a lot of people. There's a lot of time on vacations, a lot of time where people go somewhere. It's important for us to know that it's very critical to keep our community together. Thomas spent a whole week, okay, wondering and doubting and anxiety, but he was in the church. And when Jesus appeared to him, he was in the church. And by the way, even though Thomas was in the church and did not see God, God heard him very well. He did not feel that God understands him or knows what he's looking for. God heard him and understood exactly what he's looking for. So I find it interesting, if you look in the Gospel of John, you see Jesus, after this miracle, appeared to the disciples at the lake of Tiberias. There were only 7 disciples. Guess who was one of them? Thomas. Because he learned that being in the church, being in the community of love, is critical and essential to making me see Christ. May God allow us and strengthen us to tell God to walk to our hearts even when the doors are shut, and to help us to love all around us with the difficulties that comes with love and the challenges that comes with love. We could still maintain a community of love and a community of Christ, and glory be to God forever and ever. Amen.